Andrew Parker Bowles may have moved on from Camilla, but his ties to the royal family remain strong. His father was even close to the Queen Mother. When Andrew and Camilla quietly divorced in 1995, few questioned it. The official story was simple. They'd grown apart, and Camilla's path was already drifting toward Charles. But nearly 30 years later, Andrew has broken his silence in a leaked private interview, shattering the long-held narrative. Known for his restraint, he finally speaks, not for revenge, but to correct the record. "They think I fled because of Charles," he says. "But I could have lived with Charles. I couldn't live with Camilla as she became." His words struck royal circles hard. The world saw him as the casualty of a love triangle, but Andrew paints a darker picture. Not just infidelity, but cold ambition. He describes watching Camilla transform, from a bold, loving woman into someone driven by power. "She didn't just fall for Charles," he says. "She fell for what being with him could give her." Now that Camilla sits beside the king as queen consort, Andrew's truth casts a shadow over her story. His revelation isn't meant to dethrone her, but it does challenge the polished fairy tale. This isn't just about divorce, it's about legacy, power, and what was lost along the way. The question now: was Andrew Parker Bowles the first sacrifice in Camilla's rise to the throne? Andrew and Camilla met in the late 1960s. Both born into privilege, both fixtures in high society. Andrew was the ideal upper-class suitor. Handsome, well-connected, and a rising army officer. Camilla was witty, charming, and famously indifferent to royal protocol. Their connection seemed natural, with shared friends, family ties, and a love for horses. They appeared in society pages as a perfect match, but behind the scenes, things were far from ideal. Andrew's affairs were no secret. He was a charismatic flirt. Camilla, well-versed in aristocratic norms, valued discretion over drama. Yet few knew she was still emotionally tethered to Prince Charles, even after marrying Andrew during Charles's overseas deployment. Andrew recalls early warning signs: private phone calls, locked-away letters, invitations from Highgrove addressed to them both, but clearly meant for her. Still, they built a life together, had 2 children, and upheld appearances. Camilla was loyal publicly, a devoted mother and social presence, but emotionally distant. "There was a wall," Andrew says, "and I could never climb it." Their marriage became more partnership than passion, rooted in status and habit, not connection. They smiled for cameras but grew more distant in private. As Charles's marriage to Diana crumbled, Camilla's link to him intensified. According to Andrew, she changed. More guarded, more strategic. She stopped talking about their children and started asking questions about royal life. "It wasn't just that she missed Charles," Andrew says. "It was that she was preparing to stand beside him." It was never just love. It was a long, calculated move. The golden couple was a facade. As the media obsessed over Charles and Diana, Camilla and Andrew's marriage quietly unraveled. "The world thinks Charles was the villain," Andrew said. "But Camilla had her own script, and I was no longer in it." After more than 20 years together, Andrew realized their marriage had become a backdrop for someone else's story. Friends and staff knew it. So did he. Charles was always there, spoken or unspoken, a ghost in every room, every argument. "People think affairs are about sex," Andrew said softly. But this was emotional, strategic, and in some ways worse. He suspected from the start that Camilla's bond with Charles had never truly ended. She married Andrew under royal pressure, while Charles was deemed unsuitable for her. Yet Charles lingered. Andrew recalled finding intimate notes from Charles, nothing obscene, but far too personal. At first, he let it slide. Affairs weren't unusual in aristocratic circles. But Charles wasn't a fling. He was a constant. Camilla would vanish for days, citing friends. Highgrove invitations became frequent, sometimes just for her. Even the children noticed. "Where's Mommy going?" they asked more and more. "You can survive betrayal," Andrew said. but not invisibility. And that's what I became. Despite years of rumors, the affair remained unofficial. The palace denied it, the press avoided it, and Andrew stayed silent, trapped by pride and protocol. But the toll was real. He'd return from deployments to find Camilla detached, uninterested, cold. At dinners, she'd light up at Charles's name, yet barely acknowledge Andrew's achievements or even their children. Then came the ultimate humiliation. The 1993 Camillagate tapes. Raw, romantic calls between Charles and Camilla. The nation was stunned. Diana was devastated. And Andrew's silence was finally broken, if only by the truth he had long endured alone. What about Andrew? I wasn't surprised, he said. I'd known for years. Hearing it publicly just confirmed it was over. He didn't lash out or chase headlines. He quietly withdrew, emotionally, physically, and eventually, legally. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. 4 years, Andrew played his roles: spouse, soldier, silent observer. As Charles and Camilla's relationship moved from secret to center stage, he stepped aside, not defeated, but aware he'd never truly been part of that story. That realization, more than the affair, ended the marriage. By the late 80s, Andrew had stopped asking questions. He no longer flinched at Charles's name or waited for explanations. But what blindsided him was how much Camilla changed. She wasn't the woman I married, he said. It wasn't just about Charles, it was about power. The shift was subtle at first. Selective social events, carefully curated friendships, networking with people close to the crown. She used to mock that world, Andrew noted. Then she started playing the game, and winning. Camilla's transformation paralleled the collapse of Charles and Diana's marriage. As Diana won public sympathy, Camilla worked quietly behind the scenes, ensuring she wouldn't be forgotten when the royal pieces fell into place. Gone was the earthy, carefree lady who once scoffed at tradition. In her place was a strategist who seemed less interested in romance and more concerned with legacy. Camilla began holding quiet meetings, according to staff, with people involved in communications, protocol, and royal relations. Andrew claims that when he returned from military activities, he found folders under Camilla's desk containing newspaper clippings, talking points, and personal notes. She would spend hours on the phone discussing optics, scheduling, and the right timing, Andrew told me. She wasn't just planning dinner parties anymore, she was planning a future beside the king. That's when he realized their marriage had become a stepping stone, an essential institution she'd outgrown. One former family housekeeper, who had worked with the couple for over a decade, described a chilling experience. Camilla had just returned from her private visit to Highgrove. As she entered the drawing room, she looked at Andrew and smirked. "One day this house won't mean anything. I'll have a better one." Andrew did not respond. He did not argue, but the words stuck. It wasn't just a throwaway line. He subsequently explained it provided a look into her psyche. She wasn't dreaming anymore, she was plotting. Their home life became colder. Camilla began to spend more time in London, becoming closer to royal aides and inner circles. Their social gatherings, which were once filled with laughter and friendship, became rigid, politicized, and theatrical. Andrew frequently stood to the side, reduced to an accessory in his own home. "At some point she stopped being my wife," he told me. "She became someone else's partner in ambition." He does not speak with bitterness. There is no animosity in his voice. Simply a quiet, tired clarity. The woman he married had been overwhelmed by the attraction of what love could provide her with, rather than by love itself. Andrew remained longer than most men would have, out of pride, loyalty, and concern for their offspring. But deep down, he understood the truth. Camilla had stopped chasing a man, she'd started seeking a crown. By the early 1990s, Andrew Parker Bowles had evolved into a man of quiet detachment, present in title but absent in soul. He no longer attempted to repair the marriage. Camilla was rarely home. Their talks were, at best, transactional. And his children grew up in a household where affection had given way to performance. He endured for many years. 4 years, he told himself it was worth it. For duty, the children, and appearances. Then came the breaking point. And it wasn't Charles. It was something much more intimate, much more painful. According to Andrew, the final schism occurred during a private disagreement between him and Camilla. A rare moment of unvarnished truth that destroyed all hope of a shared future. It was after one of her trips to Highgrove, he explained. She returned in a nasty temper, and we exchanged words. She snapped. And in the middle of it, she said something that I'll never forget. He claimed she said the following: "Andrew, this marriage was always going to be transitory. You served as the bridge, not the destination." Andrew was stunned. He was struck by its clarity rather than its coldness, which he had grown accustomed to. It wasn't simply an insult. This was a confession, a confirmation that he had never truly been the aim, but just a placeholder. "I had given her everything I had to give," he claimed. "I am faithful. This is my name, my silence." And in that moment, she erased everything. But what wounded him the most wasn't even the dissolution of their marriage. It was what happened next. Camilla reportedly described their existence together, their family, children, and home, as a stepping stone to something more essential. "I could take the betrayal," Andrew said. "I can take Charles. I could handle the public disgrace. But I couldn't accept hearing that our children, our family, were only a part of her journey to something bigger." That night, he made a decision. He did not bang doors. He didn't immediately contact lawyers, but something inside him shut down, and from that point forward, the marriage was a formality. Within a year, he had relocated to a different wing of their estate. A few months later, he began divorce proceedings. The palace, knowing of the situation and the mounting public pressure following the leaked Camillagate tapes, encouraged caution. There'd be no media spectacle. There are no interviews. The divorce was complete. There is no battle of words. They wanted it to look clean. Andrew explained, to safeguard her, Charles, and the image. I agreed. I did not want my children to grow up in a circus. On January 11, 1995, the divorce was complete. The headlines were modest. The people barely blinked, and Andrew vanished from the royal narrative as easily as he had emerged within it. But the silence was not peaceful. It was about survival. Leaving wasn't a weakness, he observed. It was the strongest thing I'd ever done. I walked away from a woman I loved. Not because she loved someone else, but because she no longer saw us as real. He doesn't detest her. He says he doesn't blame her, but his eyes harden as he recalls that final argument, when she made him realize he would never be with her forever, just in the meantime. That, more than the affair, is what finally drove Andrew Parker Bowles away. Andrew Parker Bowles declined to give interviews following his divorce. He did not write memoirs or provide harsh statements to tabloids. He quietly vanished, not in humiliation but in quiet dignity. A guy who had been on the fringes of one of the most talked-about royal scandals of the 20th century chose to walk away rather than face the consequences. "I wasn't interested in the attention," he admitted in his recently leaked reflection. "I wanted to find serenity for once." In 1996, he remarried Rosemary Dickinson, a landscape designer and longtime friend, in a small private ceremony. There were no media cameras. There is no royal spectacle. Just a man attempting to rebuild something meaningful. After spending years as a spectator in his own marriage, Andrew focused on what was most important to him: his children, his horses, and his regiment. He remained active in the household cavalry, stayed close to his grandkids, and found delight in a quieter, more grounded life. Friends think he rediscovered himself after years of palace proximity and emotional deprivation. Life without Camilla wasn't lonely, he added. It was real. However, this does not imply he escaped unscathed. Andrew saw it as odd to watch Camilla re-enter the royal spotlight, first as Charles's public companion, then as his wife, and eventually as queen consort. "I barely recognized her," he confessed. "The lady I married was smart, warm, and irreverent. What I saw on the balcony of Buckingham Palace was someone else, regal and restrained. A lady who finally got what she desired, but not necessarily what she required." He claims to have no bitterness, yet some believe there is a subtle sadness in his voice when he discusses the past. He has a special affection for Diana, whom he has met several times, and characterizes her as deeply wounded rather than dramatic. "She wasn't mad," he said. "She was mourning a man she never truly had. I understood that because I'd already experienced that story." When asked if he ever regretted his marriage to Camilla, Andrew paused. "No, I do not regret it. We had good years. We had 2 amazing children. But I regret not walking away sooner, not recognizing when I ceased being her partner and became a placeholder." In his senior years, Andrew has become something of a private legend among royals. The man who could have sold his story for the highest price but did not. The ex-husband who had every right to be bitter but decided to be better. He occasionally attends royal functions, typically sitting a few rows back and simply observing. He has had a cordial relationship with Charles and even attended his wedding to Camilla in 2005. "That was the final page," he remarked. "The closing of a book I had finished long ago." Andrew Parker Bowles saw life without Camilla as a chance to rediscover himself. And while the public may continue to portray him as the man she abandoned, the truth, as always, is far more convoluted. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to walk away from the person everyone assumed you'd never let go. 4 years, Andrew Parker Bowles was banished to the margins of royal history. A name spoken in passing. A husband secretly traded for a future king. However, after 30 years of stillness, his voice has altered the story. The world believed he fled due to an affair, because of Charles, because he was outclassed by a love story that spanned decades and defied categories. But Andrew's truth is quieter and much more terrible. "It wasn't Charles," he explained. "That was Camilla. She developed into the lady she is today. She chose her life over ours." His confession changes everything. It challenges the fairy tale. It reveals the ambition underneath the attachment. And it serves as a reminder to the public that every royal headline comes with a human cost. A guy who watched his marriage crumble in silence rather than in flames. Camilla's rise has been amazing, from mistress to queen consort. But Andrew's remarks reveal what was lost along the way. A spouse, a house, and a version of herself unaffected by power. For Charles, they may be a silent shame, confirmation that the love he clung to came at a high cost. Andrew's perspective serves as a sobering lesson to William and Kate, who are now responsible for safeguarding the monarchy's image. And for the general people, it's an opportunity to see through the scripted grins and state banquets to the truth. Not every crown is acquired honorably. Not all love stories end in love. Andrew Parker Bowles did not seek the spotlight. He never wrote the headlines. However, with a few carefully chosen words, he has reconstructed one of modern history's most famed royal love triangles. Because ultimately, it wasn't betrayal that terminated the marriage. It was being forgotten within it. And now, finally, he has been heard. Please like and subscribe to this channel for more updates.